On this video, we're going to address the third reason why your marketing or content marketing is not working or you haven't started it up. Now, I say the third one because we've already released 2 other videos talking about the 3 reasons why content marketing or marketing does not work or fails. The first one being personnel, the second one being expectations, and this third one being direction. In my experience, 13 plus years of being in the marketing field in business specifically, and owning my own agency for 6 years, I've discovered every single excuse in the book as to why my social media failed or my podcast didn't fail or I didn't start my podcast up. Any type of marketing, any type of podcasting, SEO, funnel building, whatever it is, there's always those core 3 reasons why it doesn't work. And there's 3 silos, if you can imagine it. There's a bunch of reasons, and maybe each one of those reasons drops into one of those silos. And today we're going to be addressing direction. Now, in the other videos, I talk about how some of these things tie in together. Direction can also tie in very much with expectations and definitely with personnel, because a lot of what we're going to be talking about on direction is going to be strategy, goals, KPIs, and everything that encompasses the strategy of getting your marketing out and to the right person, plus the conversion side of it, because that's going to be something we address as well, where I see a lot of problems in people's marketing funnels. So let's dig into direction. One of the first things that I'll address with this is strategy setting. Now, I tell this all the time jokingly to people if I'm talking to them on a sales call or if they're a client of mine. And I say marketers a lot of times like to use the word strategy to make themselves sound smart and give them some sort of value piece. When in all actuality, it is very valuable to have a strategy. However, you don't want to overcomplicate strategy because then it could set wrong expectations. That could really dilute your personnel and that sort of thing. And we'll talk about all these encompassing as we kind of move along. But strategy is very important to set, of course, because you want to, in strategy, address the goals that you're going to trying to be reaching, the actual deliverables that you're trying to execute, timelines that you're kind of achieving for those, and then also the KPIs that you're going to be setting for yourself and for your team if you're working with an agency or you have an in-house team. So strategy will address all of those. Now, I'm going to do, I promise, a separate video on how I personally walk through when I'm doing consulting calls with people, how to set strategy for their social media, their podcasts, their YouTube channels, their organic content. I'll walk you through each one of those steps. So we'll do a separate video on that. So I don't want to dig too deep in that because that could be a whole long one. And then there's a couple other things that we need to talk about with direction. But strategy is very important. Make sure you do set that strategy. And that's as simple as like, well, how many videos are we posting on a daily basis? How many podcasts a week are we putting out? Who's editing? Where are we sending people as a call to action? How's the branding going to be looking? What type of guests we're getting on the show? And that sort of thing. That's where strategy really comes into play. And then also, of course, setting your goals, like making sure that we have an actual goal. Like how many leads do we want to bring in with this? How much money, what type of budget are we working with when it comes to this strategy specifically? That's all stuff that you definitely want to set. And again, we'll do another video on that. Now, kind of staying internal. On the previous video, I had mentioned that expectations are a lot more internal and direction is going to be a lot more external. So we'll get to that in here in just a second. But there's one thing that I have to mention on the internal side is making sure that that strategy that you do set with your team is actually like you're actually involving your team in that strategy session. If you're working with an agency, involve the agency with that strategy session. When I'm onboarding a client, a new client that we're managing a podcast for or we're managing social media for, I actually walk them through a full-blown strategy session, and I'm the one that's running that with their feedback and their, intimate, kind of feedback and collaboration, because it's important for them to be on the same page with me, because if they're not, then we go back to number 2, they're going to have the wrong expectations, and it's just going to be a mess working with each other. And I also, if they have a marketing person on their team, if they have an executive assistant, I have them involved as well so that there's a second set of ears that can kind of go through this together. Then after the call, I actually send them like, here's the strategy, this is what we're doing. And that's very important to set because that is the guiding principles on which we're going to be managing the content. I call this the North Star as well. Like, what North Star are we trying to drive to? I've done a video on that before. The North Star principally just being like the goals that you're setting. So if we're putting out a podcast, why are we doing that podcast? Is it to generate leads? Is it to build connection? Is it to build a brand authority or a local authority? There's a lot of different reasons, but we need to have one reason why we're doing it, and not just because somebody told us to at a mastermind because they said we had a great voice. Like, that's very important. That's part of your direction as well. But internally, we need to make sure that our team knows what deliverables are, timelines, like everything is set in stone from a strategy perspective, and any party involved has a very clear-cut direction on that. And that a lot of times is where things will fall through the cracks, or somebody doesn't do the right thing and drops a ball, maybe timeline isn't set properly, and then it becomes a personnel issue, and then personnel says, well, I didn't know, so now it becomes an expectation issue, and this whole nightmare kind of like encompasses each other. So make sure that that is very well set internally. Now let's move on to the external. So simply put, I sum this up as the customer journey. Now, this could be definitely a part of your strategy. So let's say you're starting a new marketing campaign, or maybe you just started a business from scratch and you're trying to decide who's my target demographic and what does their customer journey look like based on my product or my service or whatever it is. This is very, very important to make sure that you set this. Now, again, I've done another video specifically on your customer journey and setting that. And my recommendation is always to go with the method of the story brand method, which is a book authored by Donald Miller, but he has an actual framework that helps you walk through your customer journey. This is very important to make sure that you have this outline, because if you don't know where you're guiding your customer to, then they're not going to know how to convert with you. And this is the whole thing, is that if you don't provide specific direction for your leads, your potential leads or your prospects to get to you and convert with you, whether it's buying your product or, buying your service or whatever it is, then you're never going to have customers through the door, or it's going to be very clunky and it's not going to be consistent, and you don't want that. So you have to make sure the external direction is very clear as well. Once again, this can be very simple. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. A lot of people like to call this a funnel. That's what you could kind of like handle it as. But to me, I look at it as like, what are the steps, the journey for my customer to see maybe my first podcast and to actually buy something from me, whether it's a service or maybe a consulting call with them or whatever it is. I want to make sure I have that completely outlined so that I can regurgitate that back to them and lay that yellow brick road out for them so they can happily arrive at the destination of working with me, right? So that's important. That's kind of the thought process that we go through here. Now, again, if another really good system to work on is the one-page marketing book. I love that book because it literally has a one-page document that you outline your entire customer journey with. So that, in tandem with the story brand method, is a very good way to actually outline your customer journey and get them to where you want them to go. But one of the things that those don't address specifically that I always plug in is call to action. Otherwise known as CTA, call to action is going to be basically you specifically saying, if you're this person and you need this, well, I have this and here's how to get it. This is outlining the actual path for them. Maybe you put out a video and they saw the video and they said, awesome, Josh, I love what you have to offer. I need that. You have it. How do I get to you? That's where we want to outline it. And that's literally like maybe the last 7 seconds of your social media video, or, when you're closing your podcast, you say like, if you're this person and you need that, I have it, come get it. And here's how to get it. That's the direction that you need to provide for them. A lot of times people are scared to actually give that call to action because they're afraid that it's not delivering value, or it's just like, I don't want to just be pitchy and salesy and that sort of thing. I'll go back to a rule that I always talk about on my content, is the 90-10 rule. So principally, this means that 90% of your content, if you put out a podcast, should be value-based. Like you should drive with value, information, education, whatever you want to call it. But if you deliver that, 10% of it can be, you have now gained the license to give a call to action and tell people how to work with you. A lot of people are scared to do that, but that's a very small percentage. When you just invested 90% of that piece of content on educating and informing, and then you can ask for something in return. Like if you're a business owner and you're putting out this type of content, this is marketing. And that's what marketing is. It's providing value or some sort of edutainment. And then now we're going to tell people how they can work with us. And if you don't tell them how you can work with them, you're going to be losing leads left and right because they're not going to give the effort to go find you. So you're not providing the direction for them. This is where the external direction really comes into play. Then if we tie it back, now you're setting the wrong expectation for your customers. And then we look at it as like, oh, well, personnel wise, we're not bringing in the right leads, or no, we need to let go of people or whatever it is. Like these all tie in together. So these are the 3 reasons. If you go back to the previous 2 videos, that's kind of it for direction. But if we go back to the previous 2 videos of personnel, expectations, and now direction, we can tie all of these things in together. It's not super complex, but it's something to look out for and what I would advise you to kind of sniff out as you're working on your journey. If you have what you perceive as a personnel problem, meaning maybe a videographer is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, look at it from a standpoint of like, okay, do I have the proper timeline set in place? Do I have the proper strategy set in place? Are they clear on their actual expectations for their duties and their job, their role? Like, we need to go through those type of things before we just chalk it up as he's lazy, he doesn't want to do the job, let's fire him. He might have been the right person for the right seat and the right job that you have offered, but maybe he just didn't have proper expectations set. He really didn't know what you wanted out of it. Now, obviously, as an employee, they should be trying to gather that on their own, but you as a CEO really needs to hammer that in and dig deep on finding out what that is. And also do this with your agencies that you work with as well. If you're working with a third-party agency on anything, they really should be setting expectations, providing directions and personnel, and helping with all those, which is where I come in. Like, I kind of encompass all of these things, but I do involve my clients in all three of these things as well, which is very important. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this 3-part mini series was valuable to you and gave you a little bit of insight as to why maybe your content marketing or your marketing as a whole is not working. Maybe you didn't start something up because of one of these reasons. Sniff those out, eliminate that, solve the problem, and move forward. Again, in my years of doing marketing in 13 plus years, every single excuse or reason why something didn't get started in marketing or went on for a few days and then failed is because of one of these 3 core reasons. So sniff it out and fix it. And if you feel like it, make sure you leave a comment below with your feedback or any other questions that you have. Once again, thank you so much for joining today, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you later.